everybody, welcome to Case Mom. Today I am going to be making a loaf milk bread. It's my favorite bread to make at the moment. I found this recipe here on YouTube and I am going to leave the link to that specific video in the description box below. There might be a slight variation in which how I make this compared to the original video. Like for instance, I'm going to be using a stand mixer, and also I will not be putting the yeast directly into the warm water. Instead, I am going to be putting it directly into my flour. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the first dough. In my mixing bowl, I have 280 grams of bread flour. Okay, and then I'm gonna add in my yeast. I am using this Allison's Easy Bake yeast, so a teaspoon. Okay, I'm just gonna add it all in because I only have a teaspoon left in this packet. Okay, like I said, I'm doing this a little bit differently. Instead of adding the yeast into the warm water, I am adding it first to my flour because that's the instructions on the packet of the yeast, the specific yeast that I am using. So it really depends on what kind of yeast you're using. Okay, so now I have my water. I need 170 to 180 grams of warm water, and I usually use a thermometer to check the temperature so that it's not too hot and it's not too cold either. It has to be warm temperature, so around 44-46 degrees Celsius is what I use normally. And then I'm gonna add this water or warm water into my yeast and flour mixture. Okay, so now I am just going to be mixing this together using a rubber spatula.
When I walk into the kitchen, you saw the look on my face, you saw the look on my had to get out of this place. I seen something I've never seen before. When you put on the pineapple, we couldn't be friends anymore. Pineapple thousands, go on pizza. It's a fruit and you know that.
Okay, so right now I won't be using my stand mixer yet. Instead, I'm going to use my hand to just make sure that everything is well incorporated together.
No, you changed.
Because this is just the first dough. It doesn't really need to be kneaded yet all too well. I just want to make sure they're all coming together and mixed well together.
Pineapple doesn't go on pizza. They just don't belong.
So I've cleaned my hands and I'm still working on this. I'm just gonna mix this up as much as I can. Because it's a little bit sticky, I'm adding a little bit more flour on my hands and on the dough, just so it'll be easier for me to handle, so I can form it into a ball before letting it rest for about an hour and a half or until it doubles in size. And one of the things that I learned is that when you're working with dough and you're using yeast and all that stuff, it really helps for the environment to be warm. So if you live in a country like the UK where it's usually cold, what I do is I try to make the kitchen as warm as possible by, of course, having the heating on if it's really cold, and then if it's still too cold in the kitchen where I am going to be leaving this dough to rise, I turn on the oven and that helps. That's my dough there. It's not, you don't really need to knead it all that perfectly. Just leave it like that. Just make sure that everything's well incorporated. So I'm gonna cover it with cling film, a cloth as well on top, and then I'm gonna leave it here for about an hour and a half or until it's doubled in size. Okay, so this is what my first dough looks like. It's recent, looks pretty much doubled from its original size. So I'm just gonna deflate it, sort of get the air out of it. So now it's time to start making the second dough. So I have here 140 grams of bread flour. I'm going to add it into this. Okay, next I'm going to add 30 to 50 grams of icing sugar. It depends on how sweet you want it. So I'm just going to add it in. I'm going to let it run through a sieve. Next I'm adding half a teaspoon of salt. At this point I am going to put in my dough mixture. I want to mix this up first before adding in the next ingredient, which is another half a teaspoon of yeast. Okay, so here's half a teaspoon of yeast. So I'm just mixing this up again before I add in the next ingredient. It doesn't have to be a perfect mix because obviously it's quite dry right now. So I'm just scraping the sides. Now I'm adding in 80 grams of condensed milk, 20 grams of melted unsalted butter, 1 egg. Okay, so now I'm just going to mix this all together before using the stand mixer to knead it again.
Something I've never seen before. When you put on the pineapple, we couldn't be friends anymore. Pineapple doesn't go on pizza. It's a fruit and you know that. Pineapple doesn't go on pizza. They just don't belong.
Okay, so it looks like this is pretty good already. The bowl is sort of clean now, like not a lot of the dough is sticking to the bowl anymore. So now I am going to start using my hand to just finish it off, but this is already pretty much done, and a lot of the kneading has been done by our handy stand mixer. Dough is ready, so I'm just trying to tuck it in nicely into before putting it in a bowl that has been greased, and then we are going to let it proof again for another hour or so until it's double in size. I have another bowl here that has been sprayed with cooking oil, so let's leave it there. And once again, I will be covering this with cling film and covering it with a cloth as well, and leaving it in a place where it's nice and warm. Okay, so now I'm preparing my tin. I'm using 2 loaf tins. I sprayed them with cooking oil, and then I'm gonna dust them with some flour. So I'm doing this on my work surface where I am going to be kneading or rolling out the dough. That way as I get rid of the excess flour from my tins, they'll serve as flour for my work surface as well. Okay, so here's my dough. It's doubled in size. So I'm punching my dough to get rid of any air. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna cut this in half. I have a weighing scale, so I'm gonna weigh my dough before I cut it, so that when I cut it in two, I'll have 2 equal parts. 768 grams in total. So I'm going to put one aside for a sec, and then I'm going to knead this. Okay, so now I am going to cut this into 3 parts. Okay, so now that I have them in 3 equal parts, I am going to knead them and roll them into a ball. So roll it like this and let it rest for a few minutes. Do the same with the other ones. And then after I do this with these dough that I have here, I'm gonna do the same with the other half, the other dough that I put aside earlier. So once I finish rolling them into balls like this of the same size, I took the first one of these and I'm gonna roll it out using a rolling pin. And then I'm gonna roll it like so. And then I'm gonna put this aside. So I just repeat the same process with the other doughs. Okay, now that I've finished, I'm gonna take the first one that I did and roll it out again using the rolling pin and roll it back the same way like I did the first time. So now that I've done it for the second time, I can already put it in the tin, like so. So now I'm just gonna do the same with the rest of them. Okay, now that I'm done, I am gonna cover these up again. I like to do double cover, like with cling and then with a cloth on top. And again, I am going to leave this to rise, and of course leaving it in a warm place helps speed up that process. So I'll come back to it when it's already more than doubled its size. Okay, it's been about 2 hours now since I left this, and they have risen beautifully. So now I am just going to get ready and prepare the egg wash. One thing I'm gonna say, when you're making this bread, it is really the best bread that it's my favorite bread. But if you're gonna make it, it takes about a day. Well, for me it does, because of it's not because so much of how much you need to do with it, it's the waiting for the dough to rise, especially because it's cooler here in the UK, so it takes a lot longer because you have to wait for it to rise like 3 times, but it is so worth it. So I have 1 beaten egg. I've also got a brush. So I'm gonna take this cover now, and basically I'm just gonna take my brush and dip it into the egg, and then brush the egg on top of each dough. I am already preheating my oven to 180 degrees Celsius, and it takes about 20 to 22 minutes for this to bake. That's ready. So I just put them in there now, and now all we have to do is wait for 20 minutes.
When I walk into the kitchen, you saw the look on my face, you saw the look on my had to get out of this place. I seen something I've never seen before. When you put on the pineapple, we couldn't be friends anymore.
Looks like our bread is done. Hey, here they are.
It smells so good, you guys.
She's really excited. My daughter loves this bread. And yeah, it's all cooked. It looks beautiful. I'm going to leave them there for a few minutes, let them cool down a bit before I take them out of the pan.
Pizza, it's a fruit and you know that pineapple doesn't go on pizza. They just don't belong.
Don't forget to subscribe for more videos, and if you like this one, give it a thumbs up and share.